and welcome to Friends That Invest, the podcast that feels like a voice note from your favorite finance friend. I'm your host, Simcoe. I am wildly passionate about investing and personal finance, and I'm going to break down today exactly what you need to know about making sure that you have a very, very, very happy and healthy relationship when it comes to money and the relationships in your life. I recently just got done having my bridal shower. It was very fun. I had like a beautiful, simple get together with my friends and both my mums. And on the back of that, I thought it would only be fitting to do an episode on money, on personal finance. To start things off, did you know that 50% of the Investy Besties actually make more money than their partners? 20% of them earn about the same, and only 1/3 of our listeners earn less than their partners. So we have a large group of people that are making just as much or more money than their partners. We also find that they are definitely the CFO in their households. They make majority of the investment decisions. They don't believe that the male partner in a hetero relationship needs to make more money. In fact, 88% of them say it doesn't matter. And when it comes to joining their investments together, only 26%, only about a quarter of them said, yes, you should join your money after marriage. 37% said no, and exactly 37% also said it doesn't matter. So it's quite interesting to see that our Investy Besties are pretty financially independent. They're definitely people that make good money or just as much money, if not more. And so we've got essentially a group of women that have good money habits. They make good money. And in a world where this is almost like a new phenomenon to see that women are now the primary breadwinners, it starts to ruffle a few feathers, and it does create a little bit of not uncertainty, but it creates a space where we haven't really seen a lot of examples of money being done right when the financial dynamic is either completely flipped on its head or it's a lot more equal. And so unsurprisingly, there are so many questions, so many nuances, and so many different ways of doing money with a partner. So we're going to run through some of the most commonly asked questions, and it's just going to be a fun chit-chat episode. I'm really excited to see what the Investy Besties want to know. So let's run through some of the most commonly asked questions that the Investy Besties had around money and relationships. So the first question that came up is, Sim, should you and your husband merge all accounts? Why or why not? And which accounts? That's a really good question to start off with. When it comes to your money and your partner, assuming that a lot of our listeners are quite independent women, you sort of set off on the footing of, well, I'm independent. I've done everything myself. I've been able to set up this life. Do I want to merge money with someone else when I have created the safety net or the safe space? Because historically, when we think about women and money, it has been more often than not the case where the woman makes less money than her partner, and therefore pulling money together is without a doubt the right answer because she doesn't have as much and she is in charge of the domestic labor and the emotional labor. And maybe she does work, but she lives in a society where women's work is not valued. And so as a result, she just does not make enough money. So pulling the resources of the family together with husband's money and wife's money in this, a hetero relationship makes a lot of sense. So then does it make sense now in this day and age? I've come to realize there is no right or wrong answer, like that sort of binary thinking of we should all do it this way. We should all put our money together, or we should all have separate accounts. It doesn't work anymore. And it comes down to the couple at hand. I've found that in most of the couples that I have spoken to, the thing that works best for them is they will have their separate bank accounts, because most of the time people are getting married later. So they're coming into marriage or they're coming into relationships with their own bank accounts. They're not 18 years old, getting married, and then going to the bank together to set up their first bank account. And therefore, yeah, sure, let's do it together. So you have your own bank accounts. You usually have your own jobs. You have your own careers, and you probably have a little bit of your own money. And so what we've found is couples like to keep that independence to begin with. And then they create a joint bank account with both of their names to it. Both of them have access to a debit card or a credit card with this account, and they both pull some of their salary into this joint account. So the wife, let's call her Sally. Sally puts, half of her income into her personal account, and then half of her income goes into the joint account. And let's say her husband, John, oh my God, I cannot think of any more creative names. John does the same thing. John puts 50% of his income into his personal account and 50% into the joint account. And the amount of money that you're putting into the joint account can change over time. It doesn't have to stay the same. It can also change for different couples, and it can also change for different circumstances. Like, let's say Sally decides that, together they're going to have a baby and she's going to go off work for a year, and she's lucky enough to live in a country where maternity leave is offered, But even when you live in a place where maternity leave is available, it's never usually 100% of your income. It's usually a portion of it. And so now she has a huge hit to her personal salary and therefore a huge hit to her personal spending money, in which case then maybe the couple decides that, hey, John, actually 100% of your salary needs to go into this joint account because Sally is not making much right now at all. And this joint account is what's going to keep the couple afloat and going together. So as you can see, the structure of it is the same regardless of how much you're putting in, but the percentage of how much you're putting into the joint account changes. There are some couples that prefer to put all of their money into the same account and everything goes in there. And we've found that that's worked really well for couples that have started off with nothing on either side, and they're like, look, like, we're going to build together. We don't have a lot to come into this. Let's do it this way. Even in that case, just because of who I am, I feel so strongly about women still having a separate emergency fund that still has like a couple of $1,000s that is just for her and just her own name. God forbid anything happens, you just hear enough horror stories to know that even if you merge, like even if I was to merge all my money with my future husband, I would still have just a little separate account on the off chance that he goes crazy and I need to like book a plane flight ticket, get away and just like restart my life somewhere else. Like, I just don't think I could ever not do that. But it really just comes down to, do you need to have your money together to feel like a unified unit? In which case, I think that's an awesome idea. Go ahead. Or do you want to still keep things separate, but have some money together? In which case, that's also a really great idea. I will caveat that in the eye of the law, and it's going to be different in each country, you'll find that even if you keep separate bank accounts, the law doesn't necessarily regard that as separate income, or that your income is separate from marital assets. If you have separate bank accounts, you still have both bank accounts seen as marital property unless you have a prenuptial agreement that states otherwise. So don't think that separate bank accounts means that that's his money and your money is your money. Sally's money and John's money in their joint account and their separate bank accounts can be considered as marital property if they decide to divorce or separate and they decide to, split things. In the eyes of the law, that is still each other's money that they both have access to, and the same with their retirement funds. But really good question. The next question that came up is, my partner and I have shared goals, but I am strictly sticking to my plan and he keeps frivolously spending. How would you approach this? That's really hard. I find that when it comes to two different partners, and obviously I'd probably want more context in this example, like how long have you been together? Is this like a new relationship and it's like not really something you've discussed, or is this something that, you say you have shared goals, so I assume you have talked about your goals, and I assume this is probably a long-term relationship. It sounds like you have been more stringent with your goals and they have maybe not been, and that can sometimes cause tension in a relationship because you want to feel like you're doing things together and you want to feel like you're moving forward together. And that's tricky when you are in a relationship with another human being that has their own like thoughts and processes and actions and beliefs that you cannot like control. It's hard. It's hard when that like other person has autonomy and you're like, why do you get a choice in this? Like, this is not fun. This is not fair. In all seriousness, if you are creating goals with your partner, it really is worth coming back and talking about them again and having a conversation where you kind of like problem solve why they aren't sticking to their goals and also problem solve how it makes you feel when they don't achieve their financial goals that they say that they're going to achieve, because they probably don't even realize how it makes you feel. Because on your side, it's like, okay, I want to save up for a deposit for a house and I'm going to make sacrifices now so that I can achieve that later down the track. And then if you're dating someone that is maybe they are more of a spender, you're more of a saver, and they want to enjoy the now and they want to go on holidays and they want to, spend money together for joint experiences, but their priority is not saving for a house. Now suddenly you've got friction because you're going to start getting resentful that you're making sacrifices now for the future and they're, in your eyes, not making sacrifices at all. And it's just not lining up from their perspective. You then have to like think about, what are their values? Because our money values don't always have to align with our partners. And that is okay. Like, you don't have to be the same identical person. It's probably healthy, in my opinion, having one partner that is more of a saver and stringent and having the other partner that's like, hey, honey, let's like go and spend a little bit and enjoy and not fully, put everything off. And the healthy balance is, somewhere in the middle. And so just chatting with your partner and understanding, making sure that they understand like why you are making sacrifices and how it makes you feel when they don't sacrifice. And when you have a good shared goal together, I notice that is when you feel the most on the same team. When you go, hey, both of us, we have a goal. We want to save up for this home deposit. This is how much we have to put aside every single month. Let's put away 20%, 30%, 25% of our income. Let's both save that. And then I know that you really value splurging on, you've said he is frivolously spending. Maybe it's worth chatting with him and going, hey, honey, what are the things you really value? And then setting up a budget together where you're like, okay, well, I know that he enjoys eating out. So in our budget, let's actually set aside some money every single month for fine dining. Or if he really values camping, like let's set some money aside for the trips that we do together, that we go away on. And let's also set money aside for the goal of buying our first home together. And so when you can have both set out in a plan, it's a lot easier to manage. And I found with my friends and their partners, when they sit down and kind of write down, okay, this is our salary, this is where every single dollar is going to go, and they actually set intentional spending towards things that both partners value, then things are a lot more easy and smoother because you both know $100 a month, we're going to spend that on eating out. And $300 a month, we're going to put that away towards our dream house. And so both the future goal and the current enjoyment are accounted for instead of it feeling like you're fighting each other and kind of doing one partner gets one thing and the other partner doesn't. That helps to reduce resentment. But it's a very, very, very common thing. Like, you're not going to meet someone that has the exact same money value as you and spends the exact same amount, because it means that you've had to have had the same money story. And that's just very unlikely to find. And it's probably healthy that you both, can have some difference. Another question that came up is, my husband refuses to talk to his boss about his salary. He works 10 hours a day, but he's only paid 7.5. He's scared his boss will not want to keep him on, but it's impacting our home life and our goals. Help. This is a really good question, and one that I've seen a lot come up. People have said things like, my partner, I want to motivate him to earn more money. I want him to have like a higher salary. I want him to aim for a bigger life, which makes sense in this community because, again, in this community, most of the women in this community either earn the same amount as their partners or they earn more. They are the family CFO. They make most of the investment decisions. So this doesn't cover everyone, but by and large, most people that listen to this podcast are what I would describe as like go-getters that are always open to like learning new stuff and figuring things out. And it doesn't always mean that the partners that we choose are the exact same, and they don't have to be. When you are with someone that you are trying to like push towards standing up for themselves or getting a better job, I always say it's really important to make sure that the other person in your life wants this. And sometimes we'll have people like reach out and go, Sim, like my husband is not interested in making more money. And how do I motivate him? And I find that is a tricky question to answer because your partner, if they don't want to do something, like you cannot force them. You can encourage them of like, here are the benefits of earning more money. It can translate to more freedom. It can translate to more money invested, and therefore we can retire early. Like you can tie it to a tangible thing, but everyone's going to have different money values. And if they are like, oh, I'm sorry, like I just really love my steady, stable, cruisy job that affords me the free time to go and, spend more time with the kids and gives me more free time to share the load of, the domestic load or the emotional burden or the emotional load, and I can be a more present husband, then that's really hard to argue with. But in this case where you're going, well, he actually works way more hours than he's being paid for, but he doesn't want to talk to his boss because he's scared that his boss will fire him, and it's actually impacting your home life together. It's impacting your goals. That sounds like someone that's also motivated. You're on the same page. You both want him to earn more money. And I think it just comes down to a couple of things, like having the tools to know how to negotiate well. And we've had some really good episodes in the past on how to negotiate your salary, how to like kind of write down all the things that you bring to the table in your job, especially things that you can connect to and be like, hey, I do these 3 things and that's increased like company profits by at least like $50,000 a year. And therefore me asking a $10,000 a year salary increase is like not that big of a deal. Like surely you can give it to me because you can actually prove and quantify the financial value that you bring to the company. It's also a very common fear that a lot of people have, myself included, when I used to do salary negotiations as an employee. We're scared to ruffle feathers, and we're scared that a boss will say, oh my God, you want more money? You're fired. Like, you ungrateful little, like, get out. But that's not the case. Your boss knows. They probably have other employees. Those employees probably do always like try to negotiate salaries. And that's just part of like the role of an employer and an employee. You, as an employer, should always be looking out for your employees, and your employees should always be, this is very idealistic, but you should always be advocating for yourself, and your employer should always be advocating for you. And eventually, you find a nice middle ground. They say, hey, let's give you a 5K pay rise. You say, absolutely not. I want a 15K pay rise. And then you meet in the middle and they give you a 10K pay rise. That's usually the dance that you have. And so firstly, your husband is very lucky to have a very supportive partner that's like, yeah, honey, go get it. You deserve more. You are working overtime. Go have this conversation. But the answer will always be no if you don't ask. What is that saying? Like you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. But that's a really, really good question. Oh, a good question that came up was, what are some of the questions that you should ask your partner about money before moving in together? I love this. Before you move in with a partner, in my opinion, I mean, these are things I would do. Not everyone's going to be as open about money as I am. I think I'm probably on the extreme end of money openness and conversation. So maybe like take some of these things I do and feel free to ignore some of them because they might be a little bit too intrusive. But if I was moving in with someone, I'd actually like to know how much they make. And I know that sounds controversial. And I've had friends that have asked their spouses or their partners how much they make. And sometimes those spouses have been like, that's none of your business. And I just disagree with that. I just don't agree with that at all. Like, sure, maybe it's none of your friend's business or your colleague's business or your family's business. You know, some people feel really uncomfortable talking about money with the people in their lives. I can kind of get that now that I'm older and I'm not so like binary in how I think. But I do think you should tell your partner that you are moving in with how much you make. Because if you are now co-mingling money and putting both your names on a lease or buying a home, you need to know each other's salary. I would want to know how much they make. I want to know if they're a spender or a saver. Like, I'd ask them, I'd be like, would you call yourself a spender or a saver? Because I'm like making a mental note in my head of like, okay, well, do I have to take on more of that responsibility, or are we going to be like kind of equal in sharing the budgeting of the household? I'd ask them, do they keep a budget? Do they save and invest? Do they have auto investments? Like, how do they manage their money? Does it all just come into their account and they just kind of spend it? And if there's money at the end of the month, awesome. If not, like, you know, they wait till next month. Or do they have like a very strict system? If you're not comfortable asking that directly, I kind of like to ask them if they listen to money podcasts, because that is always a good indicator of if they are someone that enjoys listening, talking about and getting better with money, or if they're someone that like, it's just not a high priority. That's like a very low stakes question to ask. Like, oh, do you like listening to money podcasts? And then that kind of opens the floor for them to say, yeah, absolutely. I listen to like Friends That Invest or Mr. Money Mustache, or, you know, like, or they might say, no, but I listen to like a real estate money podcast, or no, but I listen to like the All In VC podcast. Like, there's so many different answers that can give you an insight of how they view money. Another question that I like to ask, again, this is not like first date questions, like, did you talk about money at home? And if they say, yes, we talked about money at home, that often is a sign that they're very comfortable talking about money with you and it'll be easy. And if they say, no, like money was not really, like my parents said it's better not to talk about it and they didn't like let us worry about it, then that usually means it might be a little bit more harder, not impossible, but harder to talk about money together, and you might have to be a bit more patient. Some other questions that I like to ask is just being honest and going, how are we going to split this? We're moving in together. How are we going to split the bills? Is your expectation that we're going to do it 50-50? That if the bills per month, you know, come to $1,000, that I'm going to put 500 and you're going to put 500 regardless of our salaries? Or are you comfortable talking about maybe a percentage split? You know, you make $80,000 a year. I make $50,000 a year. I don't know if I want to split it 50-50. Could we do maybe like a 60-40 or a 70-30 split? Are you comfortable with that? And if they're not, maybe the question then goes, well, I'm comfortable with a 50-50 split up to my salary's expectation. So I can't afford a $1,000 a month, you know, apartment, but I can afford a $600 a month apartment. Why don't we do that? I can split $600 50-50, but I can't split $1,000 50-50. And if you want a bigger apartment or a fancier lifestyle, I kind of would hope that you are comfortable topping up the difference. And if in your relationship you're the breadwinner, it's also important to have that conversation the other way and go, hey, I will more than happily go 50-50 with you at, you know, a comfortable level where you don't feel financially stressed. And if we want something that is maybe nicer, maybe a nicer apartment, or we want to upgrade to a nicer hotel room, like I'm happy to be the one that pays for the difference. And so just having that open communication means that you're not saying you're better than me or I'm better than you. You're basically saying 50-50 doesn't make sense unless we are making the equal amount of salary. And the only people that I've ever met in my life that have the exact same salary were two people that I worked with that were both optometrists, and they were a couple. And that was like the only time where your salaries were not really different. And yet, there's also other things that can cause a difference. Like one of you might have family money, the other one might not. One of you might have been lucky enough to not have student loans, the other one may have student loans. And so it's never 50-50. And so there's no point going in with it that way. There's no point going in to it with that mindset. Another question that came up is, at what point should you consider a prenup? This is a really good question. And I love talking about prenups because they have become more common to speak about, whereas like maybe in the last couple of years, people have started saying, you know what, let's talk about it. 10 years ago, not a chance at all. In a country like Australia and New Zealand, funnily enough, while I'll speak from New Zealand's point of view, I'm not 100% sure about Australia, you have this thing called a de facto relationship. And a de facto relationship is a relationship where, as seen by the law of that country, if you live together for more than 2 years, you are seen as, like, from a legal standpoint, you're basically married and your money is commingled like a married couple. And so sometimes, like, I'll see like a man in the US doing a podcast and he'll be like, I just don't want to get married because I'm scared of, like, if I get divorced with a wife that I lose 50%. Men in New Zealand men and women in New Zealand can't say that, because if they move in with their partner, let's say they move in on the 1st of August, 2025, it means that on the 1st of August, 2027 onwards, they are seen in the eyes of the law as a married couple and their money is commingled. And so trying to avoid marriage to not have to worry about like prenups and divorce and stuff doesn't work anymore, or never worked in some countries. So to answer the first part of the question of like when to get a prenup, technically it is before that 2-year period. One of our investing besties sent a really sad message about how she was in a relationship with a man. She had 2 children with him. They were like happily dating. They didn't get married. And before the 2-year mark, she tried to get him to sign a prenup because she had received $500,000 in inheritance from her parents. And so she used some of that inheritance with some of his money, and together they bought a home. He never got around to signing the prenup. And I'm not saying that he didn't sign it on purpose to be sneaky. Life gets busy. Things happen. I don't know the circumstances, but at the end of the day, the prenup was not signed. And so when they did separate, he claimed that the house should be split 50-50. She claimed that she would want to keep at least that $500,000 that her parents gave her, as it was part of her inheritance. They did not have a prenup, so it wasn't pulled out. And she said that 2 years have gone by and they are still in divorce court trying to settle this. That sounds like a nightmare. And that is the kind of stories that I hear that makes me think, God, it is just, imagine how much easier things would have been if they had sat down and they had signed that prenup and they said, look, everything that we build together, we'll separate it 50-50 from the day that we are seen as a de facto relationship. But anything beforehand, like an inheritance I get or an inheritance you get, those are not things that we can, claim on from each other. And most people, when they are in a relationship and they are happy and it's all honeymoon phase, they'll be like, yeah, of course, my partner would never do anything to hurt me. And yet I have seen time and time again, when people get divorced, men start viewing divorce like a business transaction. And it is so difficult for the female friends that I've had in my life, for them to separate the emotions of this was my husband. Oh, this was my de facto partner. And now he's turning up to these meetings and he has no interest in being kind or amicable or honoring our relationship. For him, it is just transactional. It's just doing business, and it's a very harrowing experience. I can only imagine. And so as a result, the time that you should talk about prenups, there's no right or wrong time. But I do think, when you are starting to get really serious and you have some assets that you would like to protect, there is really no wrong time to have that conversation. And I, without a doubt, believe that the right person will not run away. They will not see it as like some terrible thing that you are bringing up. And it'll kind of give you an idea of what this person would be like if you had to go down this track someday. If you have a partner that's like, you know what, honey, this is a hard conversation, but let's have this conversation. You know, a prenup will protect you and me. They might have things that they want to protect as well that you don't know of. You also want to share with them that, hey, I might have debt or you might have debt, and a prenup also protects us from if one of us develops a gambling problem and is in lots of debt is also split, you know, in a divorce. And so these things are worth talking about. And if you're with a considerate and somewhat mature partner, then hopefully you can have a civil conversation about it. And if you are with someone that like gets defensive, thinks that you're being nasty for bringing up a prenup, thinks that you're being selfish, or just genuinely makes you feel bad, then that's not like the end of a relationship, but it's definitely a sign towards, well, maybe there is some communication things that we need to fix, or maybe this isn't the right relationship for me. You're not going to know that unless you have those conversations. And it's scary, but it's without a doubt worth having. Another question that came up, I mean, there's so many good ones. I think I might have to do like a 2-part series on this. Should everything be transparent? There's a constant debate that we're going through, and we are getting married soon. And a few people have asked a similar question, like, how transparent should you be? How transparent is transparent enough? I want to say I was surprised by this question, but I guess it comes down to, again, like I said, not everyone wants to talk about money the way I like to talk about money. So I should probably be more considerate of that fact. When you talk to your partner about money, there's really no right or wrong answer to how transparent should you be. In my personal case, like, I know what my values are, and like my personal values are like education, financial freedom, and honesty. Like, I really, really, really care about all those things more than anything else. So I personally believe in being fully transparent. And so when the time was right between my partner and I, we sat down and we went through everything. I was like, this is the money that I have. This is how much I have invested. This is the home I own. This is how much I paid for it. My financial future looks like this. I'm not really going to be getting an inheritance, or if I did, it wouldn't like be a lot. There's not like a big windfall coming. I don't have like a rich auntie or uncle or family member to fall back on. And this is what things look like. And they did the same thing. And we, you know, spoke about my future husband works in finance. And so he kind of spoke about like what that looks like, and if there would be anything that he would have to look forward to or not look forward to. We spoke about debt, if we had any. We spoke about all things to do with money and what we expected and didn't expect. And we spoke about, like, I spoke about how I feel like I have a financial obligation, like in my culture, to look after my parents financially. And if anything was to go wrong with my family, like, I would love to be able to financially support them. And he said the same thing, you know, like, if it came down to it, he would want to be there for his family, and, you know, what would that look like financially? And so we had those conversations, and we were both very transparent. And that worked for us because I guess we're both in our 20s, so we don't have like too much financial background. Like, it's only a decade. And so there's not much to like discuss or cover. There's not a lot that we wouldn't have wanted to cover. Let me say that. Maybe things would be different if we were meeting and we were both, you know, in our 40s and we had this whole life before us, and there were things that we didn't want to discuss or that didn't feel appropriate. But I would hope that most couples feel comfortable, especially when you are marrying this person or you're moving in with this person. You'd hope that most people feel comfortable talking about their debt that they have. I think you should be transparent about that. If they're like working through vices, like if there is a gambling addiction, if there is a drinking problem, if there's something, a spending problem, if there are things like that that exist, you want your partner to support you through it, and you want to be able to trust them and tell them. And I think financial transparency around your money and your income is important. But in saying that, I think there are also instances where maybe it's not the right time to tell your partner everything about your money. And this isn't something I've had to worry about myself, but if you had family wealth, for example, if you had significant money coming in, like as a windfall that you were aware of, that's probably not something that you need to discuss with someone like within the first couple of dates. You don't have to be like, yeah, like my parents, they are setting aside enough money for me to like buy my own house and I never have to worry about, where I live again. Those are conversations that maybe you save for when you trust that person and don't have to be things that are told straight away. I also know that personally, I'm just unfortunately a very open book, and unfortunately I wear my heart on my sleeve and I blurt everything out. I just get it all out there. And that has worked for me, and that has also not worked for me. So I understand the need for transparency, and I also understand the need for protecting yourself. And I really think for everyone's situation, you'll have a gut feeling and you've just got to listen to that. You'll know, like, should I be telling this person this at this point in time? And eventually the goal is to get to a place where you are with someone, you're in a committed relationship with this person, and you can tell them anything and you can trust them. But you don't have to get there straight away. You can kind of see how you go over time. That's growth for me, guys, because I don't know if I would have said that like 5 years ago. It'd be like, tell them everything. And that doesn't work. But it's been really fun to talk about the different types of concerns and questions that people have when it comes to relationships. Money is the biggest cause of marital problems to begin with, and probably will be the biggest cause of marital problems in the future. So I'm glad that we were able to speak about them. And I definitely think we'll do a part 2 because this was so fun. I enjoy talking about money. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to DM us at Friends That Invest. I'm always here and happy to help answer anything that you have going on. And with that, I'll see you next week.